Hello to both of you, Anna Dumitriu and Alex May. Thank you so much for being with us here, not in France exactly, but you're in Great Britain and you were not able to be with us, but it's really important for us to hear you. You are both artists, you have different careers, but you work together and you've been working together for 10 years. Anna, you're focusing on BioArt. Your work has been displayed several places, Tate Modern, Princeton University, the Imperial College, and you're the author of a book, which is really interesting to us, which is named Trust Me, I'm an Artist. I'm sure we're going to talk about it, on being an artist, working on laboratory. And Alex, you are also British. You're an artist too, of course, and you've been working essentially, I think, with virtual reality. You focus on digital preservation, and your work has been displayed in Ars Electronica, in Impact, and the Science Gallery of Ireland. And what will be very interesting for us today is to first maybe talk about the work you have been doing together for 10 years. You've been working on several projects, and most of your work is inspired by the relationship with nature, between nature, science, technology, and most of your common work, and this is rather original and unusual, always materialize in objects and sculptures. So maybe the first question I have for you is how did nature and technology inspire you? What is the kind of imagery you wanted to create and maybe you think was lacking in this very human-centered world we live in?
Well, it's lovely to be talking to you, Zoe, and we're very sorry that we can't actually be in France with you. In terms of the relationship of nature and art, I think our work, well, both on both of our sides, it's to do with like history, but also the future and thinking about the human in that context. Actually, we are sometimes quite small in the scheme of things in the world, and this work that we're showing here is called Archaeabot, a post-singularity, post-climate change life form, and it's taking something which is one of the most ancient life forms on Earth, which is an archaea called Sophilobus acidocardarius. So there are three branches on the tree of life. There's the eukaryotes, and then there are two branches which are prokaryotes, i.e. cells without nucleuses, and they're the archaea and the bacteria. So these things, archaea, kind of are more genetically similar to humans than bacteria, but they look kind of like bacteria, and they're very, very ancient. They're also extremophiles, and so this species that we're working with, it likes to live in very hot, like sort of 80-degree temperature, and it's very acid tolerant. It loves acid rain and pollution and things like that because it's been on the planet for the longest time. And we were thinking about this, and when we learned about it, we were like, well, that's kind of the perfect life form for like the post-climate change world, or it could be. The Sulfolobus, it's been with us since the beginning, but it could be there in the future as well. I'm very happy, and it doesn't need humans, so it's against this sort of anthropocentric view. And then we kind of brought in these other sort of fears of humanity around AI, things like that. So the robot, which is an underwater robot based on cutting edge research about how these Sulfolobus acidocardarius use molecular motors to kind of move themselves around through liquids, which scientists are studying to try and make molecular robots, and they're trying to build them out of DNA origami, the scientists we were working with at the MARA project at Imperial College. And we were thinking about these other fears that humans have about AI and the future. And so it's a post-singularity and post-climate change life form. And we kind of hypothesized that you could upload your consciousness to it and live on as an archaea after humanity is gone, or something like that. So it's kind of bringing together a lot of the fears of the future in this piece, but talk about ancient life and future life.
And also just the fact that we have such a human-centric point of view. You know, when we talk about saving the planet, we're not actually talking about saving the planet, we're talking about save the humans. And
Absolutely.
because I mean if if trends carry on and go to our sort of worst fears, the world will be fine. The life will continue. Archaea will be very, very happy. But yeah,
they have the ability to be happy.
But humans will, not survive in that world. So it's kind of reflecting on that as well, and sort of reminding us that we are part of this whole system, not just separate to it.
Of course. And how is it important to maybe create an image for that? Because if you talk to me about an IKEA, I don't have, I heard of it, but of course I don't have any image to put in it.
I think it's important to make these things tangible for audiences, and so you can really think about it. I mean, you know what an archaea is. Most people don't. I mean, they're a whole branch on the tree of life, but actually they were only added in the 70s as a branch on the tree of life. Most people don't know about them, that they're even there, or that they're different to bacteria, because they used to be called archaebacteria till genomics technologies came to the fore. So people don't even know about that sort of thing. So just actually getting people to understand that there are these other domains of life is already like quite a big step. But I think, and then you can see it and you start thinking about it and start thinking about things from like the archaea point of view or something. What's an archaea-centric view of the world? What do they want? It's not all about what humans want, is it? I think.
Of course. Do you have maybe, would BioArt is a good term for you to I don't know, design what you are doing? I think you have another project to show us, but the term BioArt, is it relevant for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very happy with the term BioArt as an art form that I'm engaged with, because there's quite a big community of artists working in this field. It's a very friendly and supportive community, and actually, I mean, there are different views on things like what BioArt means, whether it means you're working with actually living things or things that are living in their process, or biological themes, and so it can be quite broad. But I've talked to Eduardo Katz, who's the person who coined the phrase BioArt, coined the term, and he said he was very happy with the idea that what we were doing could kind of come under that. So yeah, we're very happy with that.
This is really interesting, because there is this term, but I was saying it. You have been writing a book. Trust me, I'm an artist, dedicated to this practice you've been having, both of you, working with scientists with it, which is really original. What are the challenges you have working in the process of working with scientists as artists? Maybe ethical challenges, maybe also communication challenges. How do you work? Can you maybe elaborate on this process you have?
I think it's a process of sort of finding areas of commonality, and from my own experience, I mean, I did a big project with the Francis Crick Institute in London, which is the Centre for Genomic Research in the UK, and I met lots of different scientists from lots of different fields and went to their labs, and they were very generous with their time, and a lot of the experience was actually finding that we had a sort of common interest and common understanding. I mean, my background of sort of programming and understanding the actual algorithms and using things like fast Fourier transforms, which is used in very wide range of things, including sort of processing science data, and it's sort of, you find that you're able to discuss things on a deep level, but from different points of view. And I think that's where this sort of art science collaboration thing is really at its richest, when you're feeding into the same subject on a sort of same level, but often we're coming from a sort of historical aesthetic sort of viewpoint, which scientists really get on with, and they love it, and they're very well and open to it. It's just that wouldn't maybe normally be an approach that they would use in the laboratory. They'd probably get a few raised eyebrows if they wanted to do that. But
And I was going to say about like this image that we're showing here is a chicory plant. It's clone 37, I think, chicory plant in a lab that we're working in at the University of Wageningen in the Netherlands. And we're doing a project called Biotechnology from the Blue Flower. And chicory, this plant has a beautiful blue flower. It grows on the roadsides and things like that. And it's really tied into the German Romantic movement from the sort of 18th century. In fact, Novalis wrote a famous book called Heinrich von Offerdingen, where he comes up with our concept of the blue flower, which this plant has, and they believe it because it's to do with maidens crying on the roadside for lost loves and things like that. So it's probably the chicory flower, it could be the cornflower. Nobody really laid down what it is. And this book went on to inspire Goethe, who wrote the Metamorphosis of Plants and came up with this notion of the primal plant, the Erdpflanze. My poor German, I apologize for, but he talks about things like plants could grow, like everything is within the leaf, and that there is this primal plant. And so this plant was like the central thing to this German Romantic movement, which was a reaction to the Industrial Revolution. So it was like meant to be the opposite of that and privileging nature above everything else. But now they're studying chicory at the key of this sort of big European project called CHIC project that we're artists in residence on, and they're looking at genetically modifying it using gene editing techniques like CRISPR to knock out genes to improve its ability to produce dietary fiber, medicinal terpenes, and all sorts of things like that. So these are knocking out genes. So it's a technique that could occur in nature, but it would take a long time to do. And they're kind of exploring whether the public is interested or accepting of this technique, as opposed to the more famous sort of genetic engineering where they knock out genes and put in genes from other life forms and all that kind of stuff that people find a bit Frankenstein-y. So it's a different kind of approach to it, but they're interested in that. And so our work is kind of at the key, sort of like trying to talk to the public about this and trying to help them understand what's going on here. And the weird thing is, it's this question of actually Goethe said that the natural that is itself natural, what was the word? Oh, sorry, I've forgotten the quote. It's the unnatural that too is natural, I think is the quote from Goethe, or something similar to that. And nowadays, so it's at the heart of this new biotechnological revolution, this thing which was as far away from it as possible. So we're kind of drawing threads again through this. And as you can see in the lab now, they genetically modify, they gene edit using these new plant breeding techniques, which means CRISPR editing, the protoplast of the plants, and then they use growth factors in the agar to grow the plant. The whole plant grows from the cell, not just the leaf, like Goethe said, but from the actual, from just a single cell in a petri dish like that. And then we're kind of exploring ways of making it digital, kind of making the unnatural and natural kind of clash again in this work.
That's wonderful. Can you maybe talk to me briefly of fermenting futures, which is maybe linked to that, and how this collaboration materialize in these beautiful objects?
There you start.
Well, this piece, Fermenting Futures, is a collaboration with Boku University in Vienna, and we were approached by Professor Dieter Matanovic there to do a collaboration. And we've been exploring basically the history and future of yeast biotechnology in this work. So there's this one piece that it contains a yeast that can capture carbon from the atmosphere and output lactic acid. So lactic acid can be polymerized to PLA, which is used for 3D printing.
So this is interesting, and maybe I can go on to your personal work, because both of you have different fields of research. You've been working, Alex, on digital preservation, and for example, maybe the traces we leave as human in technology and the way it dies. It's as as let's say as fragile as we are. And you, Anna, on the other hand, you have been working also on maybe some mechanism that we use as human and nature, the parallelism between the two. Both of you work with non-human items, objects, presence. What kind of we were talking about the archaea, but what kind of place and will those non-human items or being will have in the future, and how can we copy with how are you copying as artists with the idea that we mentioned that we are not alone as human on earth?
I was doing a project with I was commissioned to do by the Amelia, which is a museum in Tunbridge Wells in England here, and they have a sort of very interesting and sort of collection of everything from dinosaur bones to these pantile sort of paving slabs that are all part of the local history, and I was commissioned to sort of look at this and work in a sort of digital angle, and I sort of created this piece called A Mirror for Remembering, which takes we 3D scanned several of the items from the museum, including this iguanodon bone, which I then turned into this sort of bone temple in virtual reality, because it's sort of speaking about how we have these objects that are out of context, and we infer everything about dinosaurs, and we have a fairly accurate idea, but we've never seen one, and we kind of think of history as this sort of story that's told by the objects that survive. Everything else is gone, and so when you apply that to the sort of digital arena, where we're now taking more photos than ever, we're now documenting everything, but it's completely sort of temporal and transitory, and if a major data server goes down, it's just all gone, it's all potentially, I mean, there's hopefully a lot of redundancy in the cloud, that's the promise, but the object itself, if you've just got data on a hard drive, it doesn't represent the data that's stored on it in any discernible way until you can actually process the data yourself. So if we dig up hard drives in the future, people will just be going, oh, we've got a lot of these things, but it doesn't really represent the culture that we are creating.
Anna, on your own work and maybe the relationship it has to what Alex was explaining.
Well, I mean, I'm interested in like patching and repairing bacteria, and like, can we use some of the technologies that we have today to repair this issue of antibiotic resistance, because that's an existential threat to humans that we kind of don't understand very well, because what we've done is by overusing, whatever that means, antibiotics, we've kind of driven them to evolve towards becoming more antibiotic resistant. And so I did a project where I used CRISPR technology to edit out an antibiotic resistance gene and repair it with the phrase make, do, and mend, which is a sort of wartime call to housewives to patch and repair things. And the image next to it is made with bacteria grown onto various pieces of silk, based on grown with people's different gut microbiomes, and the blue and pink bacteria are kind of different species trying to fight for kind of balance in these things. And sometimes you can see the blue bacteria, which is the enterococcus, or the pink bacteria, the E. coli, they just take over, and that's because people have been taking a lot of antibiotics. So I think, like with the plants, like with the archaea, like with the bacteria, and the yeasts too, what we need to do is think about ourselves as part of a whole ecosystem, and the viruses, because we're full of bacteria, we're covered with yeasts, we're full of I think there are even archaea in the human gut they've found, and things like that, because they all get everywhere, and there are viruses, infecting the bacteria, causing different things, and some of them beneficial to the bacteria that carry them. So I think it's high time that we stop thinking of ourselves as a as sort of this separate thing. We're full of them. We're whole ecosystems, and we're all interconnected, and all the bacteria are communicating with each other across our bodies and in our bodies as well, and with our cells and with plant cells and everything. So it's the interconnection, I think, is the most important thing.
And obviously, this is really well shown and vividly seen when we see your work. Thank you so much to you, Anna Dumitriu and Alex May, for being with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.